How's everybody doing this morning? Great. Thanks for asking. All right. Well, welcome to Church in the Village this morning. If you will stand, we will begin this morning by lifting up our voices once again. Rescue.
much for the opportunity to come and really worship in that spirit and in truth this morning, that we can look inside of ourselves and see your spirit trying to either remove those things or place those things in the right places where they need to be. Lord, I pray for the ones that aren't with us this morning, that may not be feeling very well, the ones that are busy at either events or just at work. What I pray, Lord, is that you heal the ones that need it this morning, but also reveal to the ones that are around a bunch of people that their lives matter to those people, that they can show your glory and they can worship in spirit and truth wherever they are this morning, just as long as you're on the throne of their heart this morning. Lord, I ask your blessing on this offering as we take it up. Let it be about your business, about your will. Let people just see your love through the gifts that are given this morning and that we use to better this village. Lord, I thank you for the time that we've had so far in song, and I pray that you just open up your words through me this morning. And I ask this all in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen. You may be seated. Kids, you can head back with Miss Mikey back there. I'll let you know we do have a lot of people out this morning not feeling well, so I'm very ecstatic that you came this morning, because that means you are feeling well. Maybe, right? Nobody's really looking me in the eye, but I do ask for your prayers this morning, because I'm one of those ones that had a little bug yesterday, stomach bug yesterday, and so I feel very like you do after you have the stomach bug, right? So a little tired, but so some of you might be like, yes, we're going home early today, probably. But just a couple things this morning. I need a couple more of them, like we talked last week. I need some houses from maybe some elderly people that need some yard work, maybe some windows washed. If you could get those to me so I can get them to the school and the students can do that, it'd be awesome. I had something else and I can't remember. Oh, yes, because Heather wasn't sitting here. She didn't remind me this morning. On February 13th, the annual Head Start Valentine's Day party will be happening at Camp Chautauqua, and we just need some volunteers to run that. All we really do is pop popcorn. Is that it? Oh, hand out pizza, that kind of stuff, just help them clean up and set up, all that kind of stuff. If you would like to volunteer with that, just contact us, let us know. We'll let Heather know. We are not doing the cotton candy this year. So that should help you out if you want to volunteer. Usually the cotton candies are, Dad came back out of the room to go give me a thumbs up, right? So if that's something you want to do, it's usually about an hour and a half, 2 hours, and we're out. If you have kids that need those, so always tell this to the high school. If you need community service hours for like National Honor Society or anything like that, or any other reasons that I'm not going to question, you can get those. I can sign those off. Yeah, that's usually, those kids are like, what do you mean? Oh, yeah, Mr. Clarkson, I do need some of those community service hours. But I can sign you off on that through Church in the Village. If you have some kids that want to do that, or students, or if you yourself just want community service hours and you want a record of it. About 5. Yeah, about 5. Like I said, Heather's not feeling well, and she has all those answers. But if you would like just a certificate of that you served from Church in the Village, I'll make you one of those too. And it has my signature, so it's worth something, right? Nicole's like, I don't think so. When me and Nicole were a little bit younger, 14, 15 years ago, we would watch Survivor a lot. Does anybody in here watch Survivor still? I love Survivor. I don't know what I got away from it for. I don't know, maybe they changed the night one time and we just kind of lost it. But here's what I always liked about Survivor, right? Survivor, it really wasn't about if they could survive, right? What I always found interesting was what people really cared about when there was $1 million on the line. Like, at one point, I love watching like the shows on Discovery Channel where people get dropped off and and they got to somehow survive for 21 days. And I'm not going to say the name because I know a kid in here is going to chuckle. They don't have any clothes on. Like, I love those shows because they survive and all that kind of stuff. And Rob's going to chuckle, not a kid, but that's. But when I started watching Survivor, here's what got me: when $1 million was on the line, they didn't really care about food or shelter. They didn't care about the guy that could hunt and gather and build a building or anything like that. It was really just about, how can I be the last one standing? So if you're out there on an island with me, right, in Survivor, you're probably going to keep me because I don't do anything super well, like build a shelter. Can't do it, right? If you put me and Dave out there on the same island, Dave can become like the threat because everybody needs Dave to do everything. But if Eric looks like he's lazy, let's keep him because I could win $1 million. And I would try, but I don't know how to do anything. I don't know how to start fires. I don't know how to do any of that kind of stuff. So these people would literally keep people that didn't benefit them at all and get rid of the ones that were benefiting them at least later on in the show, right? Early on, you got to have those guys or nobody's going to make it. But later on in the show, they just try to get rid of all these people that actually are true survivors because they know if they're there, people wouldn't vote their way. Now, I'd like to look at it a different way. If we were to have a bunch of toddlers right today in this room, and we all went back in that glass area up there where the camera is, and we put one toy down here and let them toddlers kind of play together, what do you think would happen? Yeah, it would be a fight to the death because each toddler thinks every toy is theirs. I'm sure Amber lives that daily. Right? It's about that thing that you think is mine, and I'm going to take it over. And on these hill journeys, as we battle, and we started this series on the heart thrones last week, we must remember that we are stewards of what God gives us, no matter what it is. Gifts, talents, money. And we're responsible for how we handle those gifts. Everyone in this room, if you've got a gift, you're responsible for how you handle that gift. And every one of us have gifts. And this includes money, but money always seems to function different in our eyes than other gifts. Always does. Now listen, you're not going to get me up here. This is very tough for me to prepare because I'm not that guy. I don't talk about money. I don't even know it exists. I just asked Nicole if I can buy something. And sometimes I don't even tell her what it is. Hey, can I buy something? And she'll be like, yeah, I think so. I'll be like, oh, a new truck. No, you can't buy that. But, money's always different. But money in itself really isn't bad. It's where the love of money comes in is where it becomes a threat to us, right? It becomes a serious threat to us when that. So we're responsible for what we do with that. So in Luke chapter 16, verses 10 through 13, it says this. Jesus is continuing this parable of the dishonest manager. And in verse 10, he says this, one who is faithful in very little is also faithful in much. And one who is dishonest in very little is also dishonest in very much. If then you have not been faithful in the unrighteous wealth, remember we talked about unrighteous wealth last week with mammon, that it wasn't really, the unrighteous wealth wasn't dirty money, right? Like I laundered all this money and it's unrighteous. What it really was is anything that you serve your life for. That's unrighteous wealth. Anything that you deem important enough to serve after, right? Who will entrust you with true riches? Verse 12, and if you have not been faithful in that which is another's, who will give you that which is your own? No servant can serve two masters, for either he will hate the one and love the other, or he will be devoted to the one and despise the other. You cannot serve God and money. So here's something where Jesus starts, this parable shifts to something that the disciples and the Pharisees, he begins to talk about something that's very near and dear to our own hearts. Money. He shares that how can we be responsible for spreading in the kingdom of God if we can't be responsible for something as small as money? Now, I know that makes me sound like, oh, Eric, you must think money's small. I don't. Listen, I don't think money's small, and I understand it, and we'll get to that point here in a second. But what Jesus is really saying here, how can I really give you the responsibility of spreading the kingdom of God if you can take something small as money and make it a big deal? But our minds automatically think about how we manage money. When we hear Jesus say that, Jesus is like, well, if you're not responsible for your money, how do you manage your money? And it is responsible to the gift that God gives you to be responsible and manage your money, but it's more than that. And it's more than just saying, hey, God's given me this gift. I need to manage it well. I need to save. I need to do the 80-20 principle right. You got to live on 80, give 10, save 10. Right? Hey, listen, you guys you don't have to buy I know what I'm talking about when it comes to money stuff, right? Yeah, that's responsible, right? But there's so much more to it when we start looking at money and what it holds on to our life. So 2 questions as I get going this morning, and the first one is, why is it so easy to fall in love with money? Why is it so easy to fall in love with money over any other gift that we have? The second one is this. What is the dangers of serving money? Right? So falling in love. I remember the moment I knew Nicole was the one. Like these harps started playing. This glow started forming behind her. And she just looked and she says, yeah, I'll go out with you. That's how I knew she was the one. Now I'm just playing. No, I just knew. And I'd say most people, you just kind of know, right? You just know. And you look at her, but here's why I knew in my heart that she was the one. I knew my life was going to be infinitely better with her in it and not out, or with her out of it. I just knew my life was going to be better with her in it. Now, it doesn't mean that everything's been roses and rainbows, but I know my life is better with her in it than it is with her out of it. And I just kind of knew that. And our heart thrones are the same way. We can be selfishly swayed very easily to what makes us believe our life's better. That's where the battle of the throne comes into our lives. What ultimately do we think makes our life better? Jesus' death, burial, and resurrection was to heal this broken relationship that we have with the Creator. But when we follow Him, our lives now become the doulos. And some of you guys that was going through, not a fan, you remember that term, the doulos. And here's what the doulos is. It's the Greek word for bondservant. And here's what a bondservant is. You had your slaves back in Jesus' time, or you had bondservants. And a slave itself was just somebody that was bought and did all the work no matter what, and they just did it, and then they would work, and they tried to work their freedom off, right? A bondservant was different. A bondservant would be granted their freedom. They would work their years that they'd have to work as a slave, and they would be granted their freedom, and they would look at the master and say, my life is way better serving you than it is on my own. So I'm choosing to be a bondservant to you. And so they would pierce their ear, and that's just kind of how they signified a bondservant. And this is what followers of Jesus are called to be. They're called to be the doulos, the willing bondservant, because we know life is better serving God than anything else. That's what it means. That's why Paul, in every letter that Paul writes, you can start in Romans and work your way all the way through that Paul wrote a book. It always starts off, Paul, a bondservant of the Lord and Master Jesus Christ. Because he knew that his life was better no matter where Jesus took him, no matter where the Spirit took him, he knew his life was better serving. 1 Timothy 6:10 says this, for the love of money is a root of all kinds of evils. It didn't just say the root of all evil, it said root of all kinds of evil. It is through this craving that some have wandered away from the faith and pierced themselves with many pangs. And so here's the issue in a follower's life, in my life, and maybe even a non-follower's life. It's easy to fall in love with money. And it's easy for money to take over the heart throne, because in every week or 2 weeks or twice a month, you get a tangible validation of your hard work. Right? If you're working, or even your retirement checks or your benefit checks, that validates what you've done. Right? It makes you say, hey, I'm working, I'm getting my money, I'm getting all this. It gives you, and so here's where the dangers come in. Because of that validation, it in turn forms your identity. I would say most people in this room, if somebody was to ask, hey, what's your name? Nice to meet you, all this. Surely enough, in the first 5 minutes of the conversation, hey, what you do? Right? What you do? Like that defines us. And so why it's so easy to get on our heart throne and fall in love with is because we get this instant validation of, yes, I am worth it. I do my hard work. Following Jesus, though, our rewards are a little bit harder to recognize. It's like the fruits of the Spirit, right? Love, joy, peace, long-suffering, patience. Those aren't as easy as recognized as when we get that paycheck from the company we work for. Right? And so we just assume that money will make our lives better. Because we get it. And we can do things and makes us happy. I'm not saying money is bad at all. What I am saying, though, this morning is, if money's on the heart throne, there's only room for one on that throne. And it's specifically built for him. Right? It's specifically built for him, like my chair at home. Nicole mentioned that the other day, by the way. Where was I? I was gone or something. Oh, I was setting up for church on Friday, and Nicole's like, I was sitting on the throne. I was sitting on Eric's chair. Man, you were eating cheese. You were eating my cheese. And then we go to Mom and Dad's, have dinner Friday night, and my cheese cubes that Mom cuts, she's feeding a dog. I was like, oh, my cheese, right? But no, that like that chair where it's been form-fitted, that's where the battle comes in. Is if something else sits in something that it's not its own, and then something's going to try to push that out, right? And there's only one room for that. I love the way J.K. Rowling in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone, I don't know the character that said this quote. Yeah, you're going to get another. Yes, I'm quoting Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone this morning, right? And so J.K. Rowling in her book says this: as much money in life as you could want, the two things most human beings will choose above all. The trouble is, humans don't have a knack of choosing precisely those things that are the worst for them. They have a knack for always choosing what's worse for them. So falling in love with Jesus means that we find our worth in him and what he's done for us, ultimately above everything else. Putting him on the heart throne because of what he did for us, right? And that our lives are infinitely better by following him daily. But money is so easy to attach all those things to because it brings control back to us. And ultimately, that's what this life is all about. Who's getting control? Which is the second point, and simply is control. Has anybody ever seen the Adam Sandler movie Click? With a remote control that controls life, right? So this remote can control everything around him. Right? He can speed up the moments that he just wants to get through. Like he had this, I remember one of them, he had this big deadline coming, right, for a project at work, so he just sped up until it was over, right? And it was over, he got the promotion, all this kind of stuff. You can rewind and change the things that you want to change. I would dare bet that there's a lot of people in here that would love to hit rewind every now and then? Yeah, I mean, right? I would love to. There's probably moments in the last week I'd probably like to hit rewind and redo the conversation with Nicole. You can change the things that you want. And really what this movie was about, he wanted control of his life. Totally wanted full control of his life. I want to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So like all the hard stuff that he had to do, he would just push fast forward and he would just kind of do what he wanted to do with his life, right? But ultimately what he found out in this movie was that when we are in control, life becomes about us and self-serving. And when it becomes about us and self-serving, that leads to loneliness. When life's all about you, you get lonely. Isn't that crazy how that works? Like if it was all about me, I'm going to be surrounded by everybody I love and all this kind of stuff, but what ends up happening is those people tend to swipe themselves away from you because life's always about you. Another movie we watch a lot is Bruce Almighty. That's not the one I was going to talk about, but Bruce Almighty. But Bruce Almighty is the movie where God gives the powers to Jim Carrey. And I know it sounds like, oh, that's blasphemous. But really, it gives you an idea of if we were in control and we did whatever God wanted, right? And here's what happens in Bruce Almighty. He sets up this prayer email request form, right? Because he's like, I got all these prayer requests coming in. And he just clicks yes to all. And a record number of like 750 million people won the lottery or something like that, and they all won 75 cents. Right? And the Buffalo Sabres, where he was, they won. And then next thing you know, it's chaos around the world because everybody's self-serving. When we decide to take control of our own lives, it becomes very easy for us to serve money because we believe that those resources are what we need to succeed in life. When we want control. So everything we end up doing in our lives will be about how we can get more of the things that we serve. Let me read that again. When we make everything in our lives about how we can serve ourselves, we will try to get more of the things that we serve. Money. Talents. Sometimes, for me, it can be kids sometimes. Sometimes it could be my spouse. And now remember, that heart throne is specifically made for somebody. And anybody else that sits on it is uncomfortable, but it's also you're putting all the pressures that should be put on God for control of your life on that person, including money. And so it becomes our little g God. Like whatever it is, it could be money, it could be whatever you put on that heart throne. It becomes the little g God in our life. We sacrifice things to it instead of sacrificing it to God for His will. It takes the heart throne and leaves us sitting there by ourselves. And here's the thing I want you to understand. I'm not saying work isn't important. I'm not saying that money isn't needed in our lives. It is. But here's what I really try and what God has been saying to my heart this week is the purpose of your work should be just as important. Not just what you get out of it, but what you give to it. As God was kind of laying a lot of this on my heart, and number one, I want to say again, not totally comfortable. That's not who I am, right? I start thinking about what everybody does in this room. You know, what's their vocation? You know, and I think, you know, like Rob, if he's going to a call, what's the purpose for Rob? Rob gets to meet people in their own home. You know, I think my life's easy to kind of look at. I mean, we go to school with teenagers every day. Yeah, Lucky us. Nicole switched jobs this year and went to 7th grade, right? She was in 6th grade last year, and she came home. She goes, I go to school for 6th graders, and I come home to 6th graders. What am I supposed to do? And then she went to teach 7th grade. Now she comes home to, I don't think she's going to move to 8th grade next year, but I don't know what's going to whatever you do, there's a purpose for you doing that job, and it's more than just getting that paycheck. There may be somebody hurting, struggling. There might be somebody that you work with that just needs you there. Psalms 106:20 says this. They exchanged the glory of God for the image of an ox that eats grass. So the psalmist here is talking about the Israelites when they're leaving and God's taking them to the promised land, and Moses goes up and he's getting the 10 Commandments chiseled out for him. I don't know how that worked. I'd love to. That's one thing I asked. How did that work? Did God just put a rock in a printer? I mean, God's infinite, you know. I mean, Moses is up there and he's giving all these commandments, right? Or God's giving all these commandments to Moses. And when he comes back down, they had burned all their gold down and they turned it into a golden calf, right? And so what the psalmist is really saying here is you've turned the God that created the calf to worship the ox, right? And so in my mind, I'm sitting here looking like, I've created the money, the gift that God's given me, and I've turned it into the thing I've worshiped over God. And that's where greed will come in, because if it's something that you worship and serve, you'll want more of it. So if God is something you worship and serve, you'll want more of it. And I'm starting to see why God commanded tithing. Not because he needs all this money, right? God doesn't need this money to do whatever God wants to do. Go look at the mountains that he made and the oceans that we like to go pay money to go see, right? And all this kind of stuff. God doesn't need that to do his work. It's because if he knows that if we don't sacrifice some of it, it will come over and take over the heart thrones of our lives. And we will begin to serve and worship that gift more than the giver of the gift. Now here, listen to me. I think the when is more important than the how much when it comes to tithing. I'm not going to talk a whole lot about tithing. I'm not even going to, this is just a brief moment of it. Here's what I mean by that is, when do you give? Is it the first, or is it whatever you have left? Right? Who are you serving when you look at it like that? There's a pastor I was listening to on a podcast this week that said they put a limit spent, like they can't spend anything. It's a lock until they write that check for tithe. I don't do that. Matter of fact, I'm going to be honest, I don't. Nicole knows I don't do any of it. I do know how to write a check, though. I do. So I really, truly believe the when, because ultimately it'll show what you serve, right? And listen, God commanded this because he knows that it's so easy to serve and worship certain things in our life. Greed. And next week we're going to talk about knowledge, just in the same sense of money. What do you serve with your life? One of my favorite poets, Tupac Shakur. This poet, right? Rap music's poetry, right? You can go read this quote if you want to just type in Tupac talking about billionaires' homes, all right? And so here, Tupac, I never knew this about his life. Now, Tupac, one of the tragic stories, of how violence can go wrong in hip-hop and all this. And Tupac was a very generous man with his money. He was known to take homeless people and give them a month's rent apartments. Or, he would feed people, and he would always be doing that. And so he starts talking about billionaires' homes. And he mentions one particular, Michael Jackson. He goes, I don't understand it. He goes, I don't understand when you have 2 kids and you got a 52-room mansion. That means there's 52 people out there that don't have a room to sleep in. And he understands. He goes, I understand your money's your money, and I understand being successful, but he goes, I don't understand when you buy 4 planes when there's people out there without shoes. And he just kept going on to say, why do you got to have 150 cars when there's people out there that can't even eat tonight? And basically he ends this whole kind of paragraph by saying, when you serve, I'm trying to make sure I didn't write it down. I want to try to get it right. When you serve the things that you think you need the most, sometimes they take you away from the things that you need the most. And so in our lives, when we serve the things that we think we need the most, it will take us away from God, which in reality is what we need the most. And so this is a multimillionaire that was talking about this, of course, but ultimately in my life, it's not as much money, but it's other stuff that becomes more important. For some in here, it may be money. That might be the one thing that says that's who I am, right? But for me, what I find out is the more attention I give the thing that I want on the throne, the less attention that God gets in my life. And the less of me seeking God. The less of me seeking what's best for my family. The less of me seeking what's best for my relationship with Nicole. You know, for me, all those years, and when I was younger, in my 20s, man, gosh, I loved coaching. I loved it. But there was times it wasn't what's best for our family. I'm sure, you that's ever had a coach for a husband, you don't really see him very often, right? But that was something that I was serving, and it was taking me away. Now, God kind of melded that, and it was a beautiful story that I'll tell at another time. Money can do that as well. And money's more dangerous because you get a visible evidence of it every couple of weeks. That's why. So we've got to fight hard sometimes to look at what the gift is. That's why money's not bad. God's gifted you with that, to do that in your life, to use it in your life. So don't let it become the God of your life. Let the God of all take control of that for you. Now, if you're like me and whatever Nicole tells me I'm good with, she'll send me, she's actually quit doing that weekly update on how much we have. I just always said we're rich. I've told you that, guys, before. I mean, she'll give me $10. We got $10, and I'm like, we're rich. We can go to Dollar Menu. We get 10 things on the Dollar Menu, Nicole. She doesn't quite feel that way, but I do. I'm like, man, we can get fries. We can get it all tonight, baby. We're good. But the thing that you serve the most will always pull you away from the thing that you need the most, unless it's the same thing. So in a follower's life, you've got to try to connect. The thing I need the most, the thing I serve the most needs to be the thing I need the most. The thing I serve the most needs to be God, the Creator, so I can serve God, the Creator. So I'm going to ask Amber to come up. We got a little late start this morning because Brian's probably out there now, but as she's coming up, one of her daughters had a little accident, so Brian had to go. That's why we got a little bit late start. But as we kind of close it up today, ultimately these heart thrones come down to one thing and one thing only. Have you really fallen in love with what Jesus has done for you? Have you really fallen in love with what Jesus has done for you? When you were so separated from the thing that you need most that He came down and sacrificed His life. You know, sacrificed His life and rose again to give you a new life so you can have what you need the most, relationship with God. And you might be in this room right now and saying, you know what, I understand it, I get it right now. And so are you ready to follow Him with that? Are you ready to say, you know, I'm going to follow Jesus? If you are, it's very simple, just saying, God, thank you so much for what you've done. I'm ready to follow you. I'm sorry for the things that I've done that's pulled me away from you. And I just want to seek you daily. I thank you for the love that you've shown me. I want to follow you. That's all you really got to say. You can say it in your own words. But you need to tell somebody about that. You can tell me after service. You can tell my dad. You can tell anybody about it. It doesn't have to be me. Just say, I'm ready to follow. And we'll talk to you about those next steps. Now, the second question, probably people in here a little bit like me, are you worn out trying to control your life? Are you worn out trying to serve yourself? Are you worn out by trying to serve what you think you need most? Now, I want to say it's simple, but ultimately it is. Just start by seeking the thing that you do need the most. Seek God and seek His answers for your life. Seek Him more than what you're seeking to fill that throne. Start by serving what He's asked you to do. Matter of fact, for some in this room, it might be your job. Say, you know what? I'm going to give you my job. I'm going to go in, open my eyes, what you want me to do here at work. For some, it might be money. It might be like, hey, God, what would you like me to do with my money? How do you want to use my money? Some, it might just be your free time, your extra time. Some, I look, up there, some of the teenagers up there, it might just be your ability, your athletic ability, your teams. Start by saying, God, you can have it. You can have it and do your will in whatever it is. So, as we end, you guys stand. I'm going to pray. Bow our heads and close our eyes. God, we do come to you this morning. God, we thank you for the opportunity now to have the thing that we need the most in our life. So I pray in my own life, I can't do this for everyone else in the room, I wish I could, but I pray in my own life that I start seeking the thing that I need the most, more than the things that I think I need. Lord, I'm sorry for the things that I put on my heart throne. And I want to give you those things, and I want you to use them for your glory. I want people to see what you've done in our lives. Continue to fill this room with your presence. We ask this in your Son, Jesus Christ's name. Amen.